Okay, looks like we are live. Yep, we are live. Okay, so what's going on, guys? Let's share this link right now. Okay. That was a bit of echo right there. I don't know. This should have muted my phone. Okay, let me double check if everything's muted because I don't want any other sound or noises of sorts here or whatever. I want this to be perfect silent. Want there to be perfect silence for when I live stream this stuff. Let's see. Okay, let's share this stream right now just in case somebody else is up. I know some people may be up, some people maybe not. I mean, personally, I just didn't pay attention to the ARCA race at all. I know it should be over by now, but yeah, okay, we are live. Come through, tweet it out. Okay, let's. Alright, perfect. Okay, so man, tonight was actually one of the race days of all time. We had trucks, we had ARCA. That's not what we're gonna be talking about today, though. We're gonna be talking about the duels actually, because I never had a chance to talk about them. I wanted to do it last night, but unfortunately my internet went down after I stream about the drivers to watch for and that whole thing. So and I tried to do it like in the morning, but I was just too tired. So and I had to get ready to go to work because I go to work at noon. Because of that, I decided, yeah, it's gonna have to wait until tonight. And besides, I feel like one of those people that is just more productive at night than during the day. So, anyways, what's going on? Welcome to another live stream. Today's topic, it's gonna be the Daytona Duels. And they were quite some duels, let me tell you. So, let me go over my notes real quick here. Let me open my notes regarding the duels. Let's actually start with qualifying. Okay, so qualifying was held under a pretty clear sky, which really upset me considering what we know about the forecast for this coming weekend. Just some, classic Florida weather. As you guys already know, the ARCA race was already moved into Friday night because of the weather. So. It's already starting. I don't want to sound like I want to be worried about that, but it's already starting. But anyways, my picks for the open cars, just so you know, I had Devitt Regan, Jimmy Johnson, Anthony Alfredo, and Cas Gralla making it in. BJ McLeod and JJ Yeley out. It really sucked. It really sucked for BJ McLeod because. I really wanted him to make it, especially with the extra money, the $4 million that he got from selling his charter to Spire Motorsports. I really wanted to pick him, but considering the fact that the open field this year is just pretty stacked with Reagan, Alfredo, Gralla, Jimmy Johnson, it was pretty hard to justify like putting Alfredo over those guys, and then JJ Yeley. I mean, it had more to do. The reason why I didn't have him on the making it to the 500 was because of the 44 car. It had nothing to do against JJ Yeley, but it was more the 44 car. That team did not even have a driver until the day before qualifying. The speculation was that it was going to be Greg Biffle. Then it was going to be a former, but then, Biffle just shut down those rumors on social media saying, no, I'm not driving for them as much as I would love to. Then a former truck champion was rumored, and then people started throwing the names Brett Moffitt or Johnny Sauter. Hell, even a Formula One champion was rumored. maybe, Kimi Raikkonen, Jenson Button maybe. But no, in the end it was, JJ Yeley. It was even, what was actually funny though was when Yeley showed up wearing the team's fire suit that had like Biffle's name on it. So again, just like Biffle said on social media, he wanted to race the Daytona 500, and the team had hoped for that Biffle would be their guy, but in the end he backed out because the team still owed him money from his 2022 part-time stint, and he refused to drive for them until he was paid. Overall, it was just a very messy situation all around, and just as I expected, when he came to like this last minute signings and stuff, the car was pretty slow, but it was slow as hell. Like, to show you what I mean, they timed in that 44 car from NY Racing Team. Those guys timed in 1.5 seconds slower than the provisional pole sitter at the time of qualifying, which I believe it was Austin Dillon at that point, but just to give you an idea, he was the 12th car to qualify. And you know how Daytona 500 qualifying usually goes. They usually do like some random draw between the bottom cars in owner points, and then they do random draw for the other car for the rest of them. So usually the slower teams get to qualify first, followed by the faster teams, like, usually. But to show you what I mean, Yeley was the 12th of 42 cars to attempt to qualify. The Hendrick cars hadn't qualified yet. The JGR cars hadn't qualified yet. The Penske cars, none of them had hit the track. Of the Storehouse Racing cars, only Ryan Preece had timed in a qualifying lap before JJ Yeley. So the other 3 of the 4 SHR cars had not qualified yet. The Trackhouse 2311, those guys had not qualified yet. The big dogs, they were still getting ready to time in their laps. So Yeley would have been last place in qualifying if it wasn't for Gralla and his 36 car not getting up to speed. He blew an engine due to a shifting issue. Again, just a byproduct of not having practice before qualifying. And look, I don't care if it's a cost-cutting measure. I don't care if teams are against it. Stuff like this is unacceptable. And it sucks that a driver that could have realistically locked their way into the 500 on time, it has to depend on the dual races just like that. Because Front Row Motorsports, and you'll see all throughout qualifying and the duels, they had speed. Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland, they look pretty speedy on the duels. They look pretty sporty. Kaz Gralla could have been there too, running up there with them, but unfortunately the team just didn't cooperate. Or rather, not really the team, more like, the circumstances. They didn't play to their favor. Practice before qualifying. Practice before qualifying. Again, I don't care. I don't care what the teams say. I don't care what the team owners say, that practice not having less practice time means that they have to potentially, it's a cost-cutting measure. I don't care how much of a cost-cutting measure it is. It actually hurts the racing product. I need starts like taking into these guys. It affects the whole product. It's just a messy situation all around, not having practice. We need at the very least 60-minute practice session before qualifying, and then you got qualifying, the duels, and then you do like the other practice session. Like, that's fine. The Daytona 500 has like the most practice sessions of all, and that's cool. But having one of those practice sessions before qualifying and the dual races, it will help a lot. Just saying. But anyways, Gralla not posting a lap turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because Anthony Alfredo, he got locked in at the 500 on speed, because at that point all of the other open cars had posted their laps. The only open car that hadn't hit the track yet was a Jimmy Johnson 84, and that was the big surprise during qualifying, because Johnson being the last of the open cars to qualify, all eyes were on him. Not only because, open car to qualify, not only because it's his first race in a Toyota. It's a 7-time champion racing in his first race for Toyota after basically racing his entire career on Chevrolet. He did not beat Devitt Regan, who was at that point the second fastest open car behind Alfredo, which means that Jimmy will have to race his way into the duels for the 500. So Anthony Alfredo, David Reagan, they locked themselves in for qualifying. And I know I shouldn't have been worried about Jimmy failing to make it to the 500. He was the best of the 4 remaining open cars by far. But given the fact that anything can happen in the duels, and in fact a lot happened during the duels, as I'll go over later, I was still concerned. You will also notice in qualifying, some of the big dogs, they qualified well outside the top 10. Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Reddick, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Martin Truex, Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs. That's pretty normal. Some drivers, they prefer a handling-based setup over speed, and coincidentally, those are the drivers who end up leading the most laps and are there competing for a win at the end. So, again, moral of the story, we've seen this before, just don't take qualifying as it is. There's still the duels, there's still the Daytona 500 left to go. Even then, I can see how some of these results could be taken as like shock value, initial shock value, but again, we have been there before. Don't fall for that trap again. That's just a fake narrative, especially when it comes to the Toyotas. Notice how the fastest Toyota in qualifying, the initial qualifying, obviously, not the dual races. In qualifying, the fastest Toyota was that of Eric Jones, and he qualified, I believe, 23rd, 25th, somewhere around there. But yeah, all of the Toyotas qualified outside the top 20. And yet they look pretty good during the duel, so, usual stuff. What was unusual, however, and this actually may be a good thing because, considering their track record in qualifying doesn't really, success during qualifying doesn't translate into the 500, Hendrick Motorsports, they didn't look as dominant in qualifying as we have grown accustomed to in the last couple of years. Other guys, they got the jump on them, and they posted like very quick laps. Joe Logano, Austin Dillon, Austin Cindric, Riley Herbst was also a pretty good surprise. Todd Gilliland and Michael McDowell, the other two front row motorsports cars, and also Harrison Burton. Notice how most of those guys that I mentioned were Ford drivers. That dark horse, the dark horse, it looked pretty good in both qualifying and the duel, so, pretty nice showing. In the end, Joe Logano, Austin Dillon, William Byron, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Austin Cindric, Kyle Busch, Michael McDowell, Ross Chastain, and Harrison Burton, they made it out of round 1. No Toyotas into the top 10, like I said, all of them qualified outside the top 20. Only 6 Chevrolets and Ford's Dark Horse Mustangs made it in there. The most shocking, however, the big name missing out there is Alex Bowman, who does not advance. His front row streak of 6 straight Daytona 500 front row starts, he has been snapped. Now, people are going to look at it as a disappointment, but, to me, I predicted this. I said, at this point, Bowman's, his front row qualifying streak, he's got to end at some point. He can't keep getting away with this. All good things must come to an end, and they did. But then again, like I said, it could be a blessing in disguise, because the last time that Hendrick Motorsports did not qualify on the front row was 2014, and they ended up winning that race with Dale Jr. So maybe Hendrick could, maybe Hendrick not qualifying on the front row means maybe Hendrick not looking as fast as they usually do in qualifying. And spoiler alert, like I just accidentally said right there, they did not qualify in the front row. So yeah, maybe this is a good omen for them, actually not putting all of their eggs in the qualifying basket, actually saving some speed for the race. Again, round 2, this was not the end, because if you remember, NASCAR has this qualifying format of round 1 is everyone qualifies, and then round 2, the top 10 cars qualify again. to make it to decide who's gonna be who's the top 10 of the starting lineup. Like anyone who qualifies outside the top 10 stays as is. The top 10, they have to post another lap and to decide the top 10 in the starting grid. So and some of the drivers who went first posted laps that were like identical or slightly slower than their round 1 times. Okay, now that I think about it, as a matter of fact, the only drivers that posted like fast laps in qualifying, they were Kyle Busch and Harrison Burton. Other than that, we saw a very common trend. Drivers who advanced to round 2, they managed to post a faster lap than anyone in round 1, including, obviously their own lap. And most who did were drivers who were among the last to qualify, like McDowell and Logano. So again, there's some big advantages to, qualifying later, because the guys who qualify first, aside from being, slower cars, they also tend to, their qualifying times don't tend to hold up a lot. And in the end, it was Joey Logano and Michael McDowell who ended up sweeping the front row for Ford. Front Row Motorsports is literally on the front row. So Hendrick's Daytona 500 qualifying dominance has ended. It's the first time since 2014, 10 years ago, they don't qualify in the front row. And Logano, his even year is off to a great start already with the new Dark Horse Mustang. And he also gives Roger Penske his first ever Daytona 500 pole award. This piece of news actually came out. Bob Pockrass tweeted it the day after qualifying. So, that Thursday afternoon before the duels. Bob Pockrass actually tweeted out that the front row and Penske, they had entered an alliance. They're off to a great start. Qualifying 1-2 with Cindric in 4th. Cindric also qualified 4th. And Harrison Burton qualified 10th in the Wood Brothers car that also has an alliance with Penske. So, Penske, the Dark Horse Mustangs, the alliance with the Wood Brothers, and now with Front Row Motorsports as well. That Super Speedway program, I'm not gonna lie, that Super Speedway program is looking as strong as ever. Now, of course, we still got the duels left to go, and we're gonna go over the duels now. So, after qualifying, the field is split into 2 duels. Duel 1, we had Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Austin Dillon, Chastain, Chris Buescher, Suarez, Martin Truex, Ty Gibbs, Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, and then the Jimmy Johnson and JJ Yeley, the 2 open cars on Duel 1. And then the Duel number 2, among those that are in Duel number 2, McDowell, Kyle Busch, William Byron, Brad Keselowski, Blaney, Bubba Wallace, Bell, Hamlin, Kaz Grala, and then Kaz Grala, BJ McLeod for the battle for the other open spot. So honestly, both duels were pretty balanced as far as heavy hitters go. Usually one duel is more stacked than the other. Honestly, as far as like, star talent, like heavy hitters go, both duels were pretty evenly balanced. You had Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex, Larson in one duel. And then on the other duel, you got Kyle Busch, Blaney, Byron, Keselowski, Hamlin. Bell and Bobbitt too. So as far as heavy hitters, pretty balanced. But duel number 2 was a bit deeper, in my opinion. More Fords compared to duel 1, which, as you will notice, duel 1 it featured more Chevrolets. Duel 2 featured more Fords, and then the Toyotas were just evenly spread out, 4 on each duel. But the stronger drivers were on the second duel with Hamlin, Bell, and Bubba Wallace, and also John Hunter. Like duel 1, it had the rest of them, Martin Truex, Ty Gibbs, and then Reddick and Eric Jones. Eric Jones is pretty underrated on super speedways, I'm gonna say, but Ty Gibbs is still a bit inexperienced, and then Truex and Reddick are not exactly great super speedway racers, at least at the Cup level. So yeah, it definitely helped out like the case for Duel 2, but both duels were pretty like pretty evenly balanced in my opinion. Not one duel was more stacked than the other. Duel 2 was deeper, yeah, but I mean you could make a case for Duel 1 as well. But anyways, let's take a look at what happened in Duel 1. Immediately, Joey Logano decides to play it safe, and he starts to, dropping back, taking it easy. Especially since, he has a lot more to lose this time, so he cannot be pulling, like, aggressive blocks on during the duels. Especially since he received team orders from Roger Penske. Since Roger Penske has never started on the pole at the Daytona 500, he wants that 22 car in one piece after the duel races. So, because if you remember, and I believe you guys know this, but for those of you guys who don't know, if the car that qualified, if the front row qualifies, or the pole sitter, or the guy who qualifies second, the two guys who qualify on the front row, if either of them get involved in an accident and it causes them to go to a backup car, they will lose their starting position. They will start from the rear, which means that the winner of the duel, of that duel race, is going to be taking their place either on the outside, either on the inside row or the outside row. Of course, especially with Roger Penske not this being a potential first for Roger Penske, Logano decides to make the smart move and not pull any crazy moves, not make any crazy moves throughout the race. He kept the car clean, which means that he will be starting on the pole, and Roger Penske will see one of his cars start on the pole for the first time in Daytona 500 history. So with Logano dropping back, you had Larson, Truex, Jones, and Suarez battling it out for the lead. Anthony Alfredo, he also dropped back. He was actually a complete non-factor during this duel race. He also got a speeding penalty during his one pit stop, I believe. That dropped in a couple laps down. Yeah. So throughout the opening laps, the outside lane was the way to go. And that's how drivers like Jones, and then later Stenhouse and Corey LaJoie, they made their way to the lead. But as the green flag run went long, the lanes eventually balanced out, and as the aggression settled down, the field, starting to settle into single file. Towards the halfway mark, the action picked up again with Truex and Stenhouse, battling for the lead. Eventually, we got to green flag pit stops. 20 to go. With 20 to go, fuel only. Everyone took fuel only, or most of them took fuel only. The Toyotas were the first to pit, but due to a miscommunication with the 19 team, Truex did not pit with them, and that miscommunication almost caused a wreck between Tyler Reddick and Ty Gibbs. There was an amazing save by Tyler Reddick, and I'm surprised that not many people noticed that, or talking about that more. That save, it would have changed the entire outcome of the duels, considering how that duel ended and who won it. But yeah, if Tyler Reddick doesn't save the car the way he does, we may be talking about a different result altogether on Duel 1. But the most affected was actually Austin Dillon. In the scramble, he made contact with Todd Gilliland, and he had to pit for 2 tires with Stenhouse on the very next lap. Then a few laps later, all of the Chevrolet pit, along with Martin Truex. Chastain got busted for a speeding penalty, and Truex, he ran out of fuel coming to his pit stall. The car shut off, and by the time he gets a refire, he loses the draft. He just took too long. That pit stop lasted way too long on pit road because of that. So after that, the Fords were the last to pit. Only 4 Fords were in the duel. This was again a duel that was like dominated in numbers by the Chevrolet Camaros. The only Fords that were in Duel 1 were Logano, Buescher, Todd Gilliland, and Ryan Preece. And when the cycle of pit stops end, Kyle Larson emerges as the leader with Suarez in second. And then as laps wind down and little, packs of cars start merging into one big pack once again, the field starts getting more aggressive. Eventually, some tight racing in the corner causes the field to stack up with 10 laps to go. This leads to contact between Daniel Hemrick and Ricky Stenhouse that sends the 31 into the wall and the 47 spinning out. And Austin Dillon and Jimmy Johnson are collected, both drivers with damage, but they are able to move on. Hemrick crashes out of the race due to damage, and he will have to go to a backup car. And Stenhouse is also out due to the freaking DVP clock. And of course, because I gotta mention this because it's Fox who's covering this race. This happened during commercials. And you already know that it doesn't matter if it's Fox or NBC. I'm gonna be taking a note. I'm gonna be making a counter of that. Like, I'm seriously considering starting to make a counter of like the commercial yellows. I believe this is the first one of the year, not counting the ones in the Clash. If there was a commercial yellow in the Clash, then yeah, you can count those too, but the counter begins with this one. This also complicated things for Jimmy Johnson because he now fell behind Yelly, and even if it's slight like damage on the splitter of the car, it doesn't matter how small the damage is. The aerodynamics of a car on a super speedway are gonna be affected. And that will complicate things even further. So basically, long story short, Johnson's gonna have to rely on the draft more than ever, because the Yelly car, it was pretty slow. Even in the draft, that 44 car wasn't really making that many moves. Yelly was trying, and JJ Yelly, rightfully so, he was trying his best. But I mean, this was a last minute deal, so there's only so much Yelly can do. But I mean, with this accident with Jimmy Johnson, the fact that he has kept the car clean, anything can happen. And now the door has opened up for him to try and sneak his way into the 500. So the restart with 6 to go. It's Larson, Suarez, Chase Elliott, Ty Gibson, Logano, the top 5, racing for the win. Although Alex Bowman and Tyler Reddick also creep up into the picture. Obviously, though, the main focus was Jimmy Johnson versus Yelly, though. And for most of that last stretch, Yelly actually had the upper hand. Even with the draft. He even made a daring move coming into, I believe, 3 laps to go, where he almost forced Jimmy Johnson below the yellow line on the front stretch. So yeah, JJ Yelly was pretty much ahead of Jimmy Johnson. I know Johnson tried to pull ahead with 2 to go, but then coming to the white flag, Yelly got into him back again. But that is until the last lap, because something happened on the last lap that just changed the entire outcome of this duel race. Coming to the white flag, Larson and Chase Elliott, they were running 1-2, Hendrick teammates, they had the race on lock. However, instead of racing each other, and also Alex Bowman was in there too in the top 5. So you had 3 Hendrick cars in the top 5, Larson and Elliott racing for the win. They decide, instead of trying to work together and secure like a 1-2-3 finish in the duel for Hendrick, they decide to race each other for the duel win up front. And this allows Tyler Reddick to slip by both of them and steal the win away from Chevrolet and Hendrick Motorsports. There was a scene, I know I saw this picture on Twitter that saw when Tyler Reddick took the lead from Larson, and Larson was just getting loose. There was like a frame where for a split second you could see Larson, Elliott, and Bowman 3 wide behind Reddick for a second, and that was pretty much the story of that final lap of the duel race. Was Hendrick Motorsports had the race on lock, but because they decided to not work together, they let Toyota steal the win away from them. And again, in the process of Reddick making that pass, Kyle Larson got loose on the outside in the middle of 3 and 4. And this stacked up the entire outside lane. It forced Yelly out of line forcing Yelly out of line, or not kind of forcing Yelly out of line. He kind of like checked up, and then he kind of had to move to the outside too, because if he kept his foot in it, he probably would have bumped Chastain, and he would have triggered a wreck in the back, and who knows what would have happened from there. But the point is, that check up on the outside lane and Yelly just forcing JJ out of lane, that was what the opening that the other JJ, that is Jimmy Johnson, that was the opening he needed. And this allowed for him to slip ahead and cross the finish line ahead of the 44 to race his way into the 500. And I'm not gonna lie, I feel so gutted for JJ Yelly there, because even though I was rooting for Jimmy Johnson, he just came so close that if he made it over the 84, I wouldn't have been mad at all, especially since that 44, they did not have a driver until the day before qualifying. It would have been a great story, like from not having a driver on Tuesday to just 48 hours later making it to the 500 with JJ Yelly outdueling 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson in his dual race. That would have been, that would have been that would have made for an awesome story, I gotta say. So anyways, Tyler Reddick wins his dual race. Chase Elliott finishes second. Alex Bowman third. Carson Hocevar, not many people talked about him. I believe like he went, not many people paid attention to him during his dual race because of all the stories surrounding it. Hocevar finished fourth in his dual race, pretty impressive. Eric Jones finished fifth. Daniel Suarez sixth. Then Joey Logano kept his car in one piece. Like I said, he finished seventh in his dual race, keeping his car in one piece, so he will be starting on the pole. Kyle Larson finished ninth after slipping up on the last lap. Jimmy Johnson in 12th after picking up a couple of spots, including JJ Yelly. Martin Truex 14th. He looked to have a very fast car, but issues on pit road kind of derailed him. And JJ Yelly 16th. Unfortunately, he's gonna have to go home. So, Duel 1 was awesome, which was a pleasant surprise considering that Duel 1 is usually quiet and Duel 2 is where most of the action takes place, or at least that's how it's been in recent years. So, let's talk about Duel 2 right now. Let's talk about that duel now. The big story of Duel number 2 was Cas Gralla, an engine change after the shifter failure in qualifying. So he will be starting from the back anyways. Not that it mattered though, because he would have been starting from the back anyway, even without the engine change. Even if he didn't have like unapproved adjustments, even if it wasn't a rule. That's what I'm trying to say. And he had it even tougher than Jimmy Johnson in Duel 1. If he would have to make the Daytona 500, he would not only have to beat BJ McLeod, but also David Reagan, because, and again, this is a very stupid rule in my opinion, because if David Reagan is the highest finishing open car in the duel, then Reagan automatically becomes the guy that qualifies by the duels, no longer by his qualifying speed. So the last spot between Cas Gralla and BJ McLeod will be decided by qualifying speed. And obviously, since Gralla did not post a lap time, he will be out in that scenario. And again, in my opinion, like I said, it's a very stupid rule, because when the open cars qualify, and the two open cars are like, qualifying to the Daytona 500, that should lock them in, period. And then you let the rest of the open cars race it out in the duels. Like the open cars that are already locked in, David Reagan and Anthony Alfredo, they should not influence which of the other open cars race their way into the 500. Like, imagine if Anthony Alfredo was the highest finisher in Duel 1. Like, imagine that. Imagine Jimmy Johnson crashes out of his duel race, but then Anthony Alfredo on the last lap, he makes a move on JJ Yelly, and Anthony Alfredo gets by him. Then that means, by that rule, that means that Jimmy Johnson, despite crashing out, he would have still made it to the Daytona 500, because by virtue of Alfredo winning his or not winning his duel race, being the highest finishing open car in the duel, he would have advanced by virtue of the duel races and not by virtue of qualifying speed. The open car that advances on qualifying speed would have been Jimmy Johnson if Anthony Alfredo was the highest. Again, in this example, the highest finishing car would have been of the duels. Would have if it was Anthony Alfredo, he would have made it by virtue of the duels, and then qualifying speed would have been between Johnson and JJ Yeley. Johnson would have made it. So technically, if Johnson crashes out on the duels and Anthony Alfredo is the highest finishing of the open cars, Johnson still would have made it into the 500 despite crashing out. So again, I feel like you see how stupid this rule is. You guys see how stupid this rule is, where like the open car that is already locked into the 500 has an influence on the outcome of the dual races. Like, I don't really like that. Duel 1 should be Jimmy Johnson versus JJ Yeley, period. Duel number 2 should be BJ McLeod versus Kaz Grala, period. Wherever Anthony Alfredo and David Reagan finish in their dual races, it should not matter because they are already locked in. You see what you guys see what I mean, right? It was a bit confusing, but hopefully you guys got the gist of it. You guys got the gist of it. So anyways, despite duel number 2 being Ford heavy, it was the Chevrolets actually of AJ Allmendinger, William Byron, and Kyle Busch who got the jump on them early on. And on the inside lane too. They actually made that inside lane work for quite a while. Meanwhile, for Ford, the main front runners, they were Riley Herbst and Noah Gragson. Two drivers you would not expect leading the charge for the Blue Oval. Just like in Duel 1, Michael McDowell, the front row starter for the outside lane, he decided to take it easy, drop back a few spots, not keeping his front row start for front row motorsport, keeping his front row starting position for front row motorsports. But yeah, just like in Duel 1, the Toyotas showed up despite starting from deep in the field. By the halfway mark, Bubba Wallace and Christopher Bell had already raced their way to first and second. And then a few laps later, Denny Hamlin would creep up his way into the picture as well. So the big surprise, however, came with the battle for the open spot. Which at this point, with Jimmy Johnson already locked in, this was basically the last open spot to be decided in the Daytona 500. BJ McLeod, driving with a Hendrick power engine that he got purchased, with the money that he got with part of the $40 million that he got from the Spire deal. BJ McLeod made his way to up to third, behind the two Toyotas, with Kaz Grala sitting dead last in 21st. He did have a moment though, a few laps before green flag pit stops, where he kind of, wiggled, got loose, something happened. This caused him to drop all the way back to dead last though. And like I said, not only was BJ McLeod driving with a Hendrick powered engine, he was also driving on a black unsponsored car for this race. Not as much because he couldn't find a sponsor, but more so because he figured that if he raced his way into the 500 with a black unsponsored car, he could demand and potentially make more money than if he failed to qualify for the 500 in a fully funded car. Again, that's just businessman mentality. It's just so how amazing, how smart of a businessman BJ McLeod is. And that part, I feel like it's very underrated of being a team owner. Even if McLeod, may not have the success of a driver, the guy is a grinder, and the guy 100% knows what he's doing. Even if he's not racing full-time in Cup anymore, he at the very least has a full-time Xfinity operation still. So I really hope they go far, and they manage to secure a full-time driver for that project again, because I feel they had some potential with Anthony Alfredo. That BJ McLeod team, they deserve some success. So anyways, just like in Duel 1, the green flag pit stops happened with about 20 to go. They were fuel only as well. The field was divided into 3 groups, and overall, the pit stops they were better organized than in duel number 1. The field was separated into 3 groups. Group 1 featured some Chevrolets, but most of the Toyotas as well. Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch, Allmendinger, BJ McLeod, William Byron. Then group number 2, you had most of the Fords, Michael McDowell, Austin Cindric, Zane Smith, Denny Hamlin, Noah Gragson, Riley Herbst. Group 2, I believe, this group I believe was the biggest group, or at the very least the group that had the most amount of cars pitting at once. And then group number 3 was just the rest of the field. Ryan Blaney, Harrison Burton, Keselowski, and Kaz Grala. They were just like 4 cars left, so that was the rest of them. So again, like I said, overall, that green flag pit cycle was better organized than in Duel 1. No miscommunications at all. Zane Smith did get hit with a speeding penalty exiting pit road. But in the end, Michael McDowell, he cycled back to the lead with Denny Hamlin in second. And Kaz Grala, with a slow stop, he lost the draft. So it all seemed like it was going to be smooth sailing for BJ McLeod. He wasn't like running the top 5 anymore. Wasn't even running the top 10 anymore. But due to the fact that Kaz Grala had lost the draft, even if he was running like towards the back of the lead draft, as long as he didn't lose the draft, he would have a chance. That all changed, however, when the big one happened with 13 laps to go. When Kyle Busch, with a push from Keselowski, he had a run on William Byron on the tri-oval, but the push got Byron loose, and that triggered a wreck. The 24 was already a bit out of shape from side drafting Ryan Blaney when Kyle Busch got into the back of him after Keselowski was pushing him. So Blaney with another, just a classic Daytona super speedway chain reaction. But Ryan Blaney with just another hard hit at Daytona. You gotta remember remembering last year's race at August that he also crashed out from. He was rightfully angry about it too. He dropped an F-bomb on his interview. You also have Brad Keselowski, Riley Herbst, Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, Justin Haley, and BJ McLeod among those involved. BJ McLeod was with minor damage, but he had to be pushed to pit road due to having several flat tires, and he would be scored as the last car on the lead lap when the race resumed. And the red flag is thrown for a 15 to 20 minute cleanup. Again, like I said, it's just a racing incident. You cannot put the blame on anyone in particular, just some super speedway racing. But you can't really fault Blaney for being frustrated, because the guy has taken 3 hard hits in the past 8 months, and none of them have been his fault. If you remember, and I say 3 because you gotta remember the 2 hits, the hit he suffered at Daytona in August, the one that he suffered at Daytona in the duels just last night, and also the hit that he suffered at Nashville that was against a concrete wall that had no safer barrier. So. And that happened in June last year too. So if you're counting at home, Blaney has taken in just an 8-month span 3 hard hits. Of course, he also won a championship. He also won a championship in that span. So I don't know. You trade 3 hard hits for a championship. I don't know if it's that good of a trade-off. You're eventually gonna end with a concussion. But anyways. I gotta say, Ryan Blaney is one tough son of a bitch. He really earned. He's really showing why he earned that 2023 title. Of course, though, he will go to a backup car as well as a few others involved. Kyle Busch and Noah Gragson. So the field restarts with 8 laps to go, and with BJ McLeod being involved as well as Kaz Grala getting through it unscathed. Kaz Grala, just like that, the script has flipped, and now it's Grala who is in prime position to lock his way into the 500 as he restarts in 7th, with David Reagan and BJ McLeod towards the back. And towards and as the field, races towards the white flag, it's Ford, The Fords line up on the outside, led by Michael McDowell, Austin Cindric, and Brad Keselowski. And then the Toyotas are lined up on the inside lane, led by Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and John Hunter. That is, however, until Hamlin decides to make a very risky block on McDowell, and this forces McDowell to drop back, because otherwise that would have been a very big wreck. I made a comment on Twitter that Hamlin is really lucky that he was racing McDowell, who had a lot to lose on this dual race, considering that he has a front row starting spot at stake by keeping his car in one piece. So Hamlin's really lucky that he pulled that block on McDowell, because if it was anybody else with less than 5 laps to go, like an Austin Cindric or even a Ross Chastain, with a dual win on the line, I don't know if they would have done the same thing. They would have probably kept their foot in it. Hamlin could have ended up on the wall or spinning out, and, who knows from there. But anyways, that block gave Bell the opening to race Hamlin side by side. Hamlin hung on, however, because, like I said, the outside was the better lane throughout the dual races. And as the Ford split up, and after Hamlin clears Bell for the lead again, and they settle on the inside, the Fords on the outside, they split up and decide to race each other. And I didn't know what was going on there, but hey, I mean, if you're a Denny Hamlin or a Toyota fan, you really love to see that. It forced a 3-wide situation that just opened the door for BJ McLeod to race Kaz Grala for the final open spot. But even with McLeod having that opening, and for parts of that run, we thought that maybe BJ McLeod can still make it after all. But you also got to remember that David Reagan was there, and Reagan was just he always tucked in behind Grala. He never left him high and dry. He stayed with his sport team and the rest of the way. And this eventually allowed Kaz Grala to cross the finish line half a car length. Maybe it could have been a full car length, but he crossed the finish line half a car length ahead of BJ McLeod, and just like that, Kaz Grala locked himself into the big show. Again, I feel so gutted for BJ McLeod. He drove an amazing race, but I had Kaz Grala making it in from the very beginning. And besides, this makes for an amazing story as well, because Kaz Grala, he did not turn a single lap during qualifying. So going from that to making the show with the odds stacked against him, for making the 500, because he not only had to beat David Reagan, he also had to beat BJ McLeod. Or rather, not only did he have to beat BJ McLeod, he also had to beat David Reagan, and also got to give a shout out to David Reagan, being a great teammate, Ford buddy for Kaz Grala. That definitely helped, because again, Reagan had nothing to lose. He was just pacing around the back of the field, just keeping his car in one piece. So Reagan just deciding to help Kaz Grala out there. It was definitely much appreciated. He did his job, and he got one job, and he did it to perfection. So anyways, as for who won duel number 2, because we have not talked about that yet. Well, on the last lap, the Fords, they eventually, they organized themselves and they make their move, led by Harrison Burton and Austin Cindric. Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell, they go up to block the run, and then, coming off of turn 2, Bell fakes Hamlin with a move to the inside, and then he crosses him over on the outside to take the lead for himself. Now, that wasn't the end of it, obviously, because entering turn 3, Harrison Burton and Austin Cindric, they had a chance to make something happen, but Cindric, in the end, decides to make a daring move on Harrison Burton, entering turn 3 to take second away from him, instead of pushing him, and that's all she wrote from the race. And that's all she wrote for the race. Christopher Bell takes Duel 2, and just like Toyota stole Duel 1 away from the Chevrolets, Toyota does the same against the Fords in Duel 2. And you better believe Harrison Burton should be pissed off about what Austin Cindric did. Because, they are, Harrison Burton, he's not like a Wood Brothers. He's a Wood Brothers racing driver, but like I said, Penske and the Wood Brothers, they have that alliance. So Penske, the Wood brothers are like that 21 car is like the fourth. They work like a fourth Penske car, um, and Harrison Burton, watching his own teammate, he has help from his own teammate, could potentially win the dual race, and then entering turn 3, the teammate decides, you know what, I'm just gonna take second for myself instead of helping you, win the dual race. That's gonna definitely sting for Harrison Burton. And I know some people say on social media that like Harrison Burton, Cindric was pushing Harrison Burton hard, but Harrison Burton, he wasn't taking any of those runs. He was like checking up. Cindric eventually got tired and decided, well, if you're not gonna take the run, I'm gonna take it myself. Regardless of what happened there, regardless of what the SMT data says, anyways, and regardless of what people's opinion are, you cannot fault Harrison Burton for being pissed off about all that, because you expect from a teammate, from an alliance mate, you expect that from you would have expected more. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. But anyways, the two duels, they were pretty much mirrors of each other. One of the duels was field of Chevrolets. That was duel number 1. Duel number 2 had more Fords. Both duels featured crashes in the final quarter of the race that led into a sprint to the finish within the 10 laps to go mark. Both of them had that, with the Daniel Hemrick crash in duel number 1, and then duel number 2, the big crash with Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch and William Byron. Both duels also feature a battle between open cars that lasted all the way until the checker flag. You had Jimmy Johnson and JJ Yeley, the two JJs, in duel number 1, and then in duel number 2 you had Kaz Grala and BJ McLeod. And also, both duels were won by a Toyota driver with a last lap pass. Duel 1 being Tyler Reddick, duel number 2 being Christopher Bell, and that was also, for both winners, that was also their only lap led of the race for each of them. So, both duels, as you can see, they were basically mirrors of each other. But most importantly, both duels, they feature awesome racing all throughout. Only one caution at each of the duels, some clean racing overall. They were the best duel races we have seen in recent memory. Not the best duels of all time. That's like, you probably had to go back and analyze the duels one by one. I know some people have said like the 2001 Daytona Duels were better, but like in recent memory, 2 duel races being great like that, I feel like, there's a pretty legit argument to be made that both that there is no year that had like that where the 2 dual races were amazing. At least in recent memory, like 2024, you can probably say 2024 has them beat. And these duels were amazing. They really hyped me up for the Daytona 500 and really hyped up for the big event now. Hopefully Mother Nature doesn't get too hyped up so we can enjoy it. The weather had been fine so far up until, that little rain shower during the truck race on Friday. I know it wasn't much, and the race still ended as, it still went the distance. But anyways, it's a sign of things. I take that little mist, that little rain cell that we had like on Friday during the truck race, I take that more as a sign of things to come. So let's see. But hopefully, let's hope the forecast keeps up for the weekend. I know, rescheduling the ARCA race to Friday to Friday after the truck race may have been a bad omen, but still. So some final thoughts about the dual races. I've always been saying this, but Toyota, those guys may qualify deep in the field for these Daytona 500s, but that's by design. I feel like we gotta stop like taking qualifying for what it is. We gotta stop taking qualifying for what it is, because it really doesn't matter. Daytona 500 is like its own thing where qualifying doesn't really matter. The dual races are what really matters to determine like the starting lineup of the race. So qualifying is just to decide like which of the open cars will just lock themselves in and which of the others will be racing by themselves in the duels. But Toyota, the main reason why they never like qualify on the pole for the 500, but they do so well everywhere else throughout speed weeks, is because they prioritize handling in the draft over speed, and that's why they can get up front quick, build momentum for race winning passes, and hold the lead for extended periods of time. They may be lesser in numbers, but they are wicked fast all the same. And now that there are like 8 Toyotas in the field, well, actually 9 because Jimmy Johnson, but there will be 9 Toyotas in the Daytona 500. So that's the most amount of Toyotas we have seen in quite a while. So you just saying, watch out for those Toyotas, man. Watch out for them. So finally, Daytona 500 lineup is set. Logano and McDowell, they will start front row after keeping their cars in one piece in their dual races. Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell right behind them in 3rd and 4th, respectively, by virtue of winning the duels. Other notable drivers: Chase Elliott, 5th, Austin Cindric in 6th. Alex Bowman, he may not have qualified in the front row, but still managed a solid starting spot in the 500. He's going to be starting 7th. Denny Hamlin in 8th, always a driver to watch for when it comes to these big races. Carson Hocevar and John Hunter Nemechek, 9th and 10th. That was pretty surprising, especially for Hocevar, first ever Daytona 500. Eric Jones in 11th, Harrison Burton in 12th, Daniel Suarez in 13th, then Zane Smith in 14th. Those Spire Motorsports rookies, they really showed up in the duels. Brad Keselowski in 16th. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on him for the big event because he is my pick to win. Kyle Larson in 17th. Chris Buescher in 19th. A bit further back than I usually see him start, but still a factor all throughout. Ross Chastain in 21st. Justin Haley in 22nd. Pretty good. And then Jimmy Johnson 23rd. Bubba Wallace in 24th. Kaz Grala in 26th. Then Martin Truex, Allmendinger, 27, 20 in 28th. Then Josh Berry 30th in the Stewart Haas Racing rookie. Then Ryan Blaney 32nd. Further back are the guys that were like involved in wrecks. Austin Dillon 33rd, Kyle Busch 34th, Stenhouse 35th, Riley Herbst 36th. Really got it for Herbst because he looked pretty fast in his dual race. And then Daniel Hemrick, 37th, Noah Gragson, 38th, and then Anthony Alfredo, 39th, David Reagan, 40th. Basically, the 2 open cars that qualified their way, that timed their way into the 500, they will be starting at the rear of the field because, again, they played it safe. They played it even more safe than the guys that qualified in the front row, Logano and McDowell, because those guys, they were just racing. They were not just racing. They were just pacing. They were like, if they didn't lose the draft, they were like at the very back of the pack, just barely hanging on to the draft for dear life. But again, I know this is by design, but still, I just find it funny that the 2 open cars that locked themselves in on time because they didn't have the urgency to race in the duels. They're going to be starting in the back for the main event. This could especially hurt the, probably the RFK cars at the start because the main reason they brought David Reagan in of the 3rd car, the Stage 60 project, as they like to call it, that 3rd part-time car, it was so they could have like more numbers for like some super speedway races. So the fact that David Reagan is going to be starting dead last, that's definitely going to affect them, especially at the opening laps. I know eventually later during the race, David Reagan is going to find either Keselowski or Buescher and work with them, but still. And of course, I know I said he's going to be starting dead last, but this is not factoring in who will go to the rear for backup cars or inspection failures. So Reagan and Alfredo, they're not going to be starting on the last row because we already know Daniel Hemrick, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, Noah Gragson, they're going to be starting from the rear. And you could see more drivers like, failed pre-race inspection 3 times and lose their starting spot and start from the rear. This is not factoring in unapproved adjustments or drivers that could drop back. Also in practice, some crash in practice may happen, and Those guys could go. Someone could go to a backup car. So yeah, but for now we have already confirmed that 4 guys are gonna be going to the rear, or at least 4 guys are gonna be going to the rear. So, anyways, that's all for the duels. We had a lot to cover, and holy shit, I just looked at the stream and it's exactly been 1 hour. I was so close to making this under 1 hour, but yeah. Anyways, the duels were fun. They were really fun, and hopefully Mother Nature stays out of the way so that we can have enjoy the 500 to its fullest. So, anyways, that's all for this stream. I'm gonna be streaming later on. I'm gonna be back up on YouTube later on talking about the truck race and the doozy that was. So you might want to keep an eye out for that. Anyways, I'm gonna go for a quick break. Gonna get some water. Hopefully I don't fall asleep. Also, follow me on Twitter or X or whatever, so that you can keep up updated with me and when's my stream schedule gonna be. It looks like for the foreseeable future I'm gonna be streaming every day at this time. I know it's not like the most optimal time to get like live viewers, but then again, like the main goal for me is not to get like viewers live on the chat or people speaking to me on the chat. Like my main purpose is like the main purpose why I'm doing this is because to cut back on editing and just get content more ready out on YouTube for you guys to enjoy. You can go and rewatch these videos back anytime too, like with the live stream replay. I always post those videos to YouTube anyway. So anyways, next video is gonna be my thoughts on the truck race. Then Saturday and Sunday, if we actually eventually go racing, gonna be talking about the Xfinity race and the truck race, and not truck race, the Cup race. Hopefully we do. So that's all for my part, and peace out.